Live show brought to you by the team at Bunker Labs, national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping our ecosystem grow. I'm your host, the one and only Iron Mike Steadman, coming to you from the Brick City, Newark, New Jersey, joined by my co-host Amy Morrison and our guest today, Rachel Costello. Did I get that right, Rachel?
You did. Thank you. Hello.
Y'all are in for a treat. Before we go live, I get to talk to the guest and learn a little bit about their background. And I'm telling y'all, Rachel is a gem. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, both from somebody that spent 30 years in the United States Navy and has reinvented herself as this entrepreneur. We're going to be talking about some customer discovery, which is super important for everyone tuning in today, especially with so much uncertainty that takes place in the entrepreneurs. One day you feel like you're targeting this customer, then you go to market, you got to adjust, you got to pivot. And it can be super challenging, but I think Rachel is going to bring a ton of insight on today's show. Before we do that, I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Amy, to talk about what's going on in the bunker.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, let's see. What do we got? Okay, so we are continuing our celebration of Women's History Month. So you can check out our blog post celebrating Women's History Month and some women business owners that we featured on the Transition podcast. So that is on the blog, and I will post the link in a sec. And then we also have a new spotlight up. We have a spotlight article on Daniela I'm going to mess it up. Mistianic Young, who was an Army intelligence officer and grew up in a cult. It's a whole thing. So you should check out that blog post. It's very interesting and insightful. And then third thing we got going on this month is veterans and residents applications are open now. So you can also check that out on the veteran website, bunkerlabs.org/VIR. And then next week, I accidentally said last week that we were going to do this week, but next week we're having Xavier on to talk about the veterans and residents program, and you can bring your Q's and we will have A's. So that is what's going on.
My man Xavier. Shout out to all the people in the chat. Will, pleasure to see you. Will's talk about my sweatshirt. I got a sweatshirt that says Newark is for hustlers, y'all. In Newark, New Jersey, hustling is our term for entrepreneurship. Sometimes you gotta have different profit centers to fund our businesses, right? We don't got a lot of venture capital out here for small business owners, but we make it happen either way. But it warms my heart to see everybody comment in the chat. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We really appreciate it. Before we talk to Rachel, I do want to give a plug for one thing real quick. The Hoover Institution at Stanford University has launched a veteran fellowship program, which I had the privilege of being part of the inaugural cohort. And they are looking for 10 veteran change makers across the country that have an idea for a project to better the community, to better the society, whether it's at the local, state, or international level. I want to encourage all you to check that program out and be sure to apply. It's really built around a project. So framing your application around a project that you can make significant progress on in a year's time frame. Okay, so for my case, I'm working on building a new gym for the Ironbound Boxing Academy called the Courage Academy, which is a 21st century, think of it, boys and girls club with a sick boxing gym and a co-working space, both co-located. So that's what I'm working on. But it's a great program. It's a great network. Really want to encourage you all to apply because this is the kind of impact we can create in the veteran entrepreneurial ecosystem. They are looking for change makers. And if you feel like you fit that bill, go ahead and apply. I got a couple of videos on my personal page as well as on the Hoover Institution's LinkedIn page as well. All right. Enough of that. Enough of announcements. We're here to talk about Rachel and customer discovery. First of all, I'm telling y'all, Rachel's a badass, right? I jumped on the interview. I started asking some questions, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like we're kindred spirits. Like, I feel like I'm a Renaissance man. I've done so many incubator, accelerator programs to get to where I'm at now. And then I look at you and your background, and you've done pretty much the same thing. And so please go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself. Let everybody know what you've got going on.
Hi, my name is Rachel, and I am a co-founder and CEO of Innovative Ventures, and we help small business and startup draft and execute customer discovery and development strategy. And so you could concentrate on growing and scaling your business.
Customer discovery. I feel like you're talking that Silicon Valley, D school, woo-woo, right? We need business. We need money. We need money in the bank account.
That's
right? How does
right.
customer discovery help us solve this problem? And I'm doing air quotes because I know what customer discovery is. I'm just poking fun.
Yes, customer discovery really is a secret sauce to business success. And without it, you will probably likely not do well in business.
So businesses fail for two reasons, primarily,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Number one, no market need for their product or services. That means
That's right.
nobody's buying. And number
Hmm.
two, they run out of cash, right?
That's
So
correct. Yes.
why do you think, knowing this, right? Why do you think people sham on customer discovery?
People sham on customer discovery because they are uncomfortable talking to strangers. And also, most likely, they don't want to be told that their idea is not a fit, right? It's like being told that your baby's ugly or your dog's not cute. So people tend to have an idea and they run straight to the market, start spending money on websites, building things, prototype, and then run out of money. So when you build a wrong thing, you're going to have difficulty finding a market. No one's going to buy your product. And if you start hiring, they can't sell your product because they don't know, they don't know what to sell. So in addition to what you mentioned, Mike, is that people run out of money, they have no market. It's also because they built the wrong thing because it's
Yeah.
not what the customers want.
So what does it look like? How does one start doing customer discovery?
Well, first of all, you need to create an avatar or persona of your ideal customer profile, right? And then once you do that, you create, okay, let's just say my ideal customer is Mike. I need to find out everything about you. I'm going to stalk you on the internet, LinkedIn, whatnot, to find out what makes Mike tick, and then find out potential Mike's pain point is. And then you build a list of assumption based on your guesses, and then you start asking questions. So, for example, I would ask you all kinds of questions like you did with me earlier, so I can know everything about you, and then start building validation. So you need to interview about 20 people to get your customer discovery interview skills learned. Like boxing, right? You need to learn a little bit. Then when you get to 40 people, you'll start to get more comfortable talking to strangers. And when you get to 60 people, you start getting really good insights. But if you want to go ask for money from other people, you need to have about 100 interviews under your belt. Because at 100th mark, you're going to have a really good trend on whether or not your idea is actually desirable. And once it's desirable, you can figure out how it's feasible and grow from there.
What's the difference between customer discovery and just trying to sell the product, right? So knowing where
Mhm.
I'm at now, and I'm gonna speak about myself, right? I'm not going public with anything I can't sell. So I've already probably sold it at least 10 times over before I go
Mhm.
public on my social or
Mhm.
let everybody know that I'm launching this venture. Just because, like, at this point, I I know that the market has the final say, right?
Yep.
So when
Mhm.
you're advising founders, especially bootstrap entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
they need to spend this time customer discovery, but they also need to spend this time selling the product. And one of my worries that if we
Mhm.
over index on the discovery aspect, it can still be a false negative, right? So
Yep.
if somebody
Mhm.
says, "Oh yeah, I would definitely use that," I'm like, sell it to them right then and there on the spot. Let's get the money in the bank account, because there's a difference between, "Oh yeah, this sounds like a pain point," and
Mhm.
actually paying for someone else to solve it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You're doing the right thing. It's called building a minimum viable product, right? So the failure that I've seen in the past, including my own experience working for a software company, is that some founders are so intent on making your product just so before they go to the market and then run out of money, right? So it's best idea to while you're interviewing your customers with 20, 40, 60, 100, you should be creating a features that seem to resonate with the customers. And then you present those to the people you're interviewing, right? But don't forget that customer discovery is interviewing, you're not selling. So that's because once you start selling, people stop talking to you. But
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I was asking, right? So when we're doing a customer discovery, it's purely market research on our part. So we're
Yes.
just trying to take 10, 15,
Hmm.
30 minutes to interview
Right.
a potential prospect. And maybe they're not a
Hmm.
prospect. Maybe we're just going to market trying to figure
Yeah.
out, hey, what problems are people in this demographic facing, so that we
Hmm.
can craft a solution for that problem.
Exactly. And it's all about listening, right? And people have a tendency to over to speak too much. and not listen to the person you're interviewing. So the best thing to do is when you're talking to anybody during your customer discovery process, just listen. You'd be
Yeah.
amazed. Just ask them, hey, tell me about your day. And they'll just talk all day long. And those are all the free gold nuggets you're getting. Because then you're building a
Yeah.
feature set, right, on your product.
One of the things you talked about was coming up with personas. And I
Mm-hmm,
have noticed when I work with
mm-hmm,
larger organizations, right, they tend to craft like a bazillion personas, right?
mm-hmm.
And then you look at the copy that we have on our websites and everything, it's not even speaking to the demographics that we're looking in those personas. So it almost becomes like this busy work that people end up
Mm-hmm.
doing. They have
Yeah.
these Google folders and these drives of like
Mm-hmm.
personas and PowerPoints, but it's like I feel like there's a disconnect between like what their copy actually looks like when it comes time to attract them. And so one of the things I try to tell people, and it is in line with what you said, is at the end of the day, it's all a hypothesis. We have to
Mm-hmm.
validate. And so I say, come up with what I call your perfect customer thesis. So this is who you believe is your perfect customer that's willing
Mm-hmm.
to pay you a premium for your product or services, tell everyone how amazing you are, make a constant stream of warm referrals on your behalf, and actually make us enjoy being an entrepreneur. But then
Yep.
you're going to go to market and you're going to find out whether they're your perfect customer or not. So have that ideal perfect customer that you think, and then maybe
Mm-hmm.
have two, no more than three other audiences that you're going to go after, especially early on when people are like hustling. No, they're trying to make it. Now we got to do customer discovery on top of all this other stuff. But it
Yeah.
is an important component because you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
build a product that nobody's buying.
Exactly. Exactly. Absolutely. So you actually said what I also believe is that you should have no more than three personas. You could go ahead and create um, more than that, but you're gonna be trying to boil the ocean, as Steve Blank would say. Then your attention's all over the place. I'm gonna sell my product to everybody. It doesn't work. If I say I'm gonna sell my product to um, a demographic of, let me see, urban dweller between ages of 18 and 21, something like that, right? And then you need to really know that person.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Who's your
Okay.
perfect customer for Bona Vita Ventures?
My perfect customer of Bonavita Venture is a startup or a small business founder who is looking to find a product market fit for their product or service. And they're looking for someone to at least coach them along.
Have you now when you work with Bona Vita, do you do the interviews yourself with their demographic? Is that part of your offering?
The demographic interview has to be with the founder,
Why is that?
right? Because I cannot do their job for you. You need to be, as a founder, you need to be able to find out for yourself. That's part of your growing process as a founder. I will help you create a interview questions on how to interview, and how to create your avatar, and also creating assumptions list. I could do all that for you, but the actual interview has to be done by the founder.
I'm glad you said that, especially early on.
Mhm,
I think the same goes for the sales process. Like again, everything
mhm,
I'm telling y'all, like I'm saying this stuff, I've learned the hard way. Like blood, sweat, and tears, jaw been broke, been knocked down. I'm still surviving. But the ability for you to sell your products or services early on, because all that is going to translate into your copy. It's going to translate into your value proposition, right? If you can't close deals yourself, right, you're probably screwed out the gate. I'm just being honest, right?
yeah.
There's an art and science to being an entrepreneur, and I've noticed that the entrepreneurs that I see that are super successful, they're not afraid to sell, right? The founders, they lit out there, they're on calls all day, they're tracking their calls each week, their sales calls and stuff, and they're driving that revenue. Because I think what you said is true, that people have this, and I'm gonna speak to the veteran entrepreneur ecosystem.
Mhm,
We have a lot of ego, right? We're so bullish on our problem and solution, and we think this is it because we sell this idea, right? Entrepreneurship is built around, oh, this entrepreneur that comes up with an idea that's going to change the world. But then you find out like your baby's ugly, and it's hard to let go of that. And what you have to do is you have to look for those market pulls and see, hey, what is the market actually telling you? And then
mhm.
mold your business, your product, your service, whatever it is you're doing around that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't you rather know now, early on, if your baby is ugly, right? Because then, what if you just spent all the money creating prototype and going to trade fairs and all that, and
Yeah.
only to find out later that that's not what the customer wants.
Yeah, remember back in the day? I bet some of y'all tuning in still do it. You come with a business, you get your little business card, right? You pay the designer to do the little website, knowing damn well you ain't sold nothing yet. I've been there, I done it. Now I know better, right? You want to sell, you want to start talking to customers sooner rather than later. Now we have an expert on, and also y'all, Rachel, she's a badass. 30 years in the Navy. What rank you get out as?
E9, Command Master Chief.
Command Master Chief, transition into this new career as an entrepreneur, which is not an easy thing to do. I mean, entrepreneurship is really, really hard. And so for you to recreate this new life for yourself, learning these new skills, I mean, design thinking, hacking for defense, right? You have to have a growth mindset to sit in the seat that you're in today. And I think you're inspiration for a lot of people that are tuning in because, when veterans transition out, they're thinking about, oh, what does that next move look like? Or people that are working that corporate job and they're thinking about starting their venture, and it's a transition as well. And so I think having you come on, who's gone through that, I mean, it's super powerful for our community.
Thank you.
So we got people tuning in. We got a customer discovery expert. Go ahead and drop your problems in the chat. Let's triage them right here and now live on office hours. So if we can solve something for you on the customer discovery front or give you some advice, we would love to do so.
Yeah.
I've got a couple projects that I'm working on. I do brand strategy for quite a few veteran-led brands. We got a startup. I'm not going public with it yet, but I'm doing some brand strategy for a startup. And one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do some customer discovery as well. And this is really targeting the nonprofit sector. And so, again, like bare bones basics, right? So the minute someone signs with you, says, okay, we're going to do some customer discovery, what are the 3 things that we're going to do right out the gate?
Let me see. Right out of the gate, we'll be talking about creating your persona, your ideal customer profile, or in your case, Mike, if you're a nonprofit, we'll be looking at your ideal customer profile for organizations. And within that organization, we'll identify who's the potential user, who is potential buyer, and who's potential saboteur. And it will
say that again.
Yeah.
User and buyer. Okay.
Right.
Why is that important?
Because users may not necessarily have the influence or decision-making skill to be the buyer, and you know the difference. Because both they each have a different needs, right? And you also need to identify a saboteur. Saboteur is a person that will do everything they can to make sure that your product or service doesn't enter the company or the market, because by doing so, they may lose their business or they may lose their jobs.
James says, I had vendors endorse my idea as well as the customers. I had signatures endorsing my idea. Now, James, my question for you would be on the endorsing front, like, have you been able to charge, right? So again, people will say, oh, this sounds like a great idea. I fully support it, but it's all fun and games until that money is in the bank account. So I'm curious to know, like, if you've been able to actually sell. And the reason I asked you about the users and decision makers or buyers, there's an entrepreneur I follow by the name of Alan Wise, $1 Million Consultant, and he titles it the economic buyer. When I figured that out, it was a game changer for me, because you spend all this time talking to people that don't have the decision-making ability, right? And you feel like you're running in circles versus finally you get on with an economic buyer, that business owner, that VP, whoever, who has decision-making ability, and boom, it's like night and day. And I think a lot of our viewers will spend a lot of time talking to people that aren't that decision maker, and it just slows the process down so much.
Absolutely.
Let me go to the chat. Michael Persner says, business partner and I have an idea and we have paid to make an MVP. We were hoping that the beta test of our product online service was going to help us refine the direction and feature set of our full product. Are we doing this backwards?
Yes. Unfortunately, yes. It's not too late though. It's customer discovery is not a destination, it's a journey. So it's never too late to start, but I would suggest to start your interview process now. You already have a MVP, which is great because it's a minimum viable product, not a prototype. So you're not too far off, but you need to make a list of the features that you have and start talking to your ideal customer profile people.
Yeah. One thing on the features thing too, people over index on features, right? Yeah. Right. You need to emphasize the benefits. Like, what is the benefit of this product? What does it allow us to do? Features come later. And I notice a lot of startup founders, they'll come out the gate. It does this, it does that, it does this, it does that. But it's like, what's the benefit of it? Is it saving me time? Is it saving me money? Is it improving my health? Like, emphasize the benefits. The other thing, there's an entrepreneur I had on my podcast, Dog Whistle Brandon, called April Dunford. She wrote a book called Obviously Awesome. She is the ninja product marketing, product positioning guru. And one of the things she talks about is people want perspective. They want your point of view of like, why do you exist? Right? What is it that you're solving for this industry? And then they want perspective, i.e., what are other options they have to solve the same problem? And a lot of times, entrepreneurs, we don't like to talk about our competitors as if they don't exist. But when people are making a buying decision, right, they want to know. They're like, hey, where do you fit in? And so what you do is you do talk about those competitors because they represent other options. And then you say, this is where we differentiate ourselves. This is where we fit in. And being able to do that and talk through that, that's an example of a sales call so far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jamie J, shout out to my man, Jamie J, Bottleneck Digital Assistant. He says Crossing the Chasm is a great book. I'm actually going to get the author on my podcast as well. I actually owe him a write-up because I had to see him speak at the Military Veteran Startup Conference. But for everyone tuning in, that is also a great book. James says, I asked James a question of, everyone's endorsing his idea, but he's only talked to family so far. Be careful around family, right? Because family, that can be a false positive. All right. It's just too safe. Friends and family are too safe. You need to go out into the market and literally talk to people and get them to make some kind of commitment, some exchange of money or something. Because like I said, businesses die on the family vine all the time. It's like, oh yeah, it sounds like a great idea. And as soon as you go to market, you're bankrupt versus actually going out there and trying to sell customers. So you got to push yourself. You got to step outside that comfort zone. Think about where your perfect customer spends their time. What conferences are they a part of? What social groups are they a part of? They're on LinkedIn. They're on Twitter. Start literally talking to customers.
Absolutely. Mom test, right?
Yeah, the mom test. That's another great book. Check out the mom test. Jamie J says, I truly believe that someone is going to buy for two reasons, emotions or scarcity. The reason they purchase using one of these two reasons is because of how the product and or service impacts their lives, i.e. benefits. And Jamie runs a digital assistant company that he does. They're called distant assistants. So his virtual assistants are stationed in the Philippines. And the problem that a lot of CEOs face is we're doing administrative tasks that we know is not high value. You know what I'm saying? If you're like, let's say Rachel, for example, her time is worth $10,000 a minute. I already asked her. I was like, oh, how much you charge for your customer discovery? She's like $10,000 a minute. So if you're doing administrative tasks behind the scenes, trying to fill out spreadsheets and send emails or manage your calendar, when are you free? When are you free? When are you? That's not the best use of your time. Having somebody like a Jamie J who runs this team come in and get you a virtual assistant to free up. See, that's the benefit. See, now you're unlocking new value, right? Because you're holding yourself back. See, that's what we're talking about. And so you really need to emphasize the benefits of what your product or service does to impact the lives of that perfect customer. So we got a few minutes left. We're going to transition to book recommendations. Rachel, what book recommendation do you have for our customers?
Let me see. I have two. Value Proposition Generation by Alex Osterwalder.
Yeah.
And it's very, very easy to read and step by step on how to create value proposition. The other is Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank.
Yeah. Rachel, now that book is not easy to read.
No, it's not. You gotta read it.
I got those books back here because I did a lean startup program and they gave me these thick books and the design and stuff is great. Those are not easy books to read, but they are great resources. I will say that if you do an entrepreneurship program, whether it's Stanford Ignite or whatever, you're going to see these classic tests come up, lean startup, Eric Ries, the Alex Osterwalder books, etc. Now, Jamie J says he's got a question for you. What is the best way to transition/pivot according to current trends?
And what is Jamie J's business? Virtual assistant.
His is the Bottleneck Digital Assistants, distance assistants.
I'm not sure. I could certainly talk to him offline, but his business, I think, is needed. I would like to talk to him about, what his business is all about. The only reason you want to pivot is when you're finding that your business is not growing or scaling the way you thought it
Yeah.
would. Yeah, but
Yeah.
don't pivot too quickly. But let's talk, why you're trying to do that.
And then there's also the verticals, right? So a lot of times we start out and we're either going up or horizontal. Can you talk to us about
Yeah.
that?
I'm sorry.
I said, can you talk to us about that? The difference between vertical and horizontal verticals?
Oh, the verticals, like the market verticals.
Yep.
Yeah, so you never know what opportunities are out there. I usually talk to people about make sure that when you're talking about the your verticals and horizontals, let's explore all adjacent markets available to you before you start making change.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Does. And Jamie, here's what I'm going to tell you, right? The Stockdale paradox. All right. You got to accept the brutal facts of your current reality. So in this case with SVB is creating chaos and challenges for clients. These are the brutal facts. Okay. Now, what do you take that and you say, okay, I'm going to have faith that things are going to work out in the end, but we got to actually start making some actions. We got to start taking some steps, and you need to go through what's called the What's Next Accelerator. I'm going to send it to you once we jump off, and it's a framework to think through decision making. Because a lot of times, right, when we get stressed out with changes in environments and trends, right, it's so easy to just kind of jump out and make a decision on stuff without actually taking the time to think through it, right? And so this document I'm going to share with you is going to allow you to get your thoughts out of your head. It's going to make you put the brutal facts, what's working, what's not working, and honestly, worst case scenario, right? Sometimes we got to go through that mental model that if nothing changes, this is where we're going to be at. And so when you're able to see that and say, okay, this is what it is, then it's actually going to make you more confident to move forward. And so that's what I'm going to encourage you to do is like start getting stuff out of your head. Think through the Stockdale paradox. What's working? What's not working? Have those brutal facts listed and what's case scenario. And then you got to start making some decisions. Maybe start exploring different market opportunities, right? Jim Collins calls it fire bullets than cannonballs. This is no different than bigger companies, right? They got to innovate themselves or they go out of business. So you got to start shooting some bullets, target some different markets, some different verticals, see where that market pull. And then all of a sudden you find out, we created bottlenecks for this, but we also have a real strong opportunity to support this. And then you got to say, okay, realistically behind the scenes from an operations perspective, this is the challenge for a lot of us is we've already set the systems for this client. Now we've got to introduce new systems. And so you got to go through almost the startup process all over again, really refining the back end to make sure that you can serve those clients. So that's just my advice. I'm going to send you that What's Next Decision Accelerator on LinkedIn. So that was a great question. My book recommendation, I don't have one. I have a podcast that I'm tuning into called Chop Up by Lincoln Design Co. As a branding guy, I follow a lot of branding agencies and designs and stuff like that. And they've been putting out some great content on their social about how they think about design. And so I've been watching their show on YouTube. So that's my plug. Looks like we lost Rachel on video, but that's all right. I'm a Marine, improvise, adapt, and overcome. We're wrapping up anyway. First of all, I want to thank y'all for tuning in to Office Hours. We really appreciate you. I've got some great content coming out on the Transition Podcast. Listen, if y'all are not tuning into the Transition Podcast, you're missing out. Brandon Shelton from Task Force Capital, I had him on talking about the cost of doing business, the reality of what business looks like from the other side of the table as a venture capitalist, and the stuff that they're experiencing. I really want to encourage you to check that out. And then I last week also had on Mike Nemeth, the founder of Emblem Athletic. And Mike had some significant, he's done the entrepreneurial roller coaster, right? Started a business by himself, scaled it up, right? And then had some significant challenges with COVID and everything. And he grew his team. He's dealt with payroll issues. He's been through the entrepreneurial roller coaster. Please check out that podcast and let us know what you think of it. I think it's going to provide a lot of guidance and insight to you all because this is the beauty of this content. You do not have to go at it alone. I know it feels like it. Everyone is not in these major metropolitan areas. Some of y'all might be tuning in from North Dakota or who knows wherever else, but you still have a community here. And we do our best to reach out and touch you through the content we produce at Bunkers. So make sure you're tuning in. I want to thank Rachel for tuning in today, for being with us today as our guest.
Sure.
I also want to acknowledge the MetLife Foundation for supporting the Transition Podcast and making it possible. So Rachel, before we go, where can people find you? How can they get a hold of you?
Let's see, since I'm still working on my website right now, they can reach me at Rachel.Costello at Bunker Labs. I'm one of the ambassador at San Diego.
Boom. There it is. Until next time, everyone. Peace, love, and have a great rest of your